Do you know what happens when a VIP pours wine on a waitress in a room where the mafia boss is watching and nobody is allowed to react? The red liquid hit the silver tray first, then spilled over her wrist, sliding down her trembling fingers like a slow punishment. The glass didn't break, but something worse did, the control she was trained to keep. On the soaked apron clipped to her waist, a small laminated badge shifted under the stain, its barcode flickering under the chandelier light. Her other hand instinctively closed around a folded document hidden under the tray, edges already bleeding ink where the wine touched it. "Apologize," the VIP said softly, smiling as he set the empty glass down, like he had just corrected a mistake in etiquette rather than erased a person's dignity. 3 hours earlier, the ballroom had been perfect in the way expensive things pretend to be innocent. Crystal chandeliers suspended above polished marble floors, a string quartet bleeding through the air like a memory no one owned. Waitresses moved like shadows trained not to exist, and among them was Lena Carter, balancing a tray of vintage Bordeaux with fingers that had learned precision through necessity, not elegance. She wasn't just working tonight. She was surviving until tomorrow's custody hearing, where one wrong word, one missed paycheck, could cost her the only thing she had left. Her son's drawing was folded inside her apron pocket, edges softened from being touched too many times during breaks she didn't take. The VIP entered without announcement, but the room adjusted itself anyway. Mr. Caldwell, investor, donor, a man whose name made managers straighten their spines before he spoke. He moved through the crowd like permission rather than presence, smiling politely, touching shoulders, leaving behind the feeling that everyone owed him silence. Lena noticed him the way she noticed everything dangerous, without looking like she noticed. But what she did notice was the security camera above the east column flicker once, then lock its lens slightly lower than regulation. A small shift, wrong enough to matter. She adjusted her tray, stepping toward the service corridor, when Caldwell's voice cut through the noise behind her, calm, almost friendly. "Careful there." The wine hit her before she turned. Not an accident. The liquid spread across her apron in a slow, deliberate bloom, soaking into the laminated badge she wasn't supposed to question. A few guests laughed softly, assuming clumsiness. Someone whispered, "Typical staff mistake." Lena didn't move immediately. She felt the weight of every eye without seeing them. Then she bent, slowly, and picked up the fallen document that had slipped from under her tray. A page she had never seen before. Blacklisted names. Internal system clearance codes. And at the bottom, her name, stamped in red, termination pending. Her breath stopped. Not fear. Recognition. Because she had never signed anything that allowed her to be erased. Across the room, at the edge of the private dais, the mafia boss finally looked up. Not at the VIP. At the document in her hand. His expression didn't change, but something in his stillness did, like a locked door realizing someone had already copied the key. Lena lifted her eyes just once, meeting his gaze for half a second too long, and in that silence she made a decision she didn't have permission to make. She didn't hide the paper. She held it where he could see it, and the security camera above them rotated again, quietly recording her face as if it had been waiting for this exact moment to begin. The glassware was still being collected when the silence stopped pretending to be accidental. Staff moved in careful loops around the spill zone, wiping marble that already looked too clean to remember what had happened. Lena stood near the service corridor, her apron damp and heavy, holding the folded document inside her palm like it might change shape if she loosened her grip. The security camera above her no longer faced her directly. It had rotated back to its default angle, as if nothing had ever forced it to look away. A dishwasher door slammed in the back kitchen, followed by the low mechanical rhythm of plates clattering through hot water, a sound too normal for what the room had just absorbed. Mr. Caldwell was laughing again at a table near the center, voice smooth, controlled, almost apologetic as he leaned toward a cluster of investors. "Minor incident," he said lightly, as if assigning language could erase memory. A manager appeared beside Lena without announcing himself, adjusting his cufflinks before speaking. "You're off station for now," he said with a practiced smile that never reached his eyes. "We'll handle the paperwork internally." Paperwork. The word landed wrong. Lena felt it immediately. Her shift ended in 3 hours. She knew that because she had checked the time twice before the wine was ever poured. Yet when she looked at the digital schedule monitor mounted near the kitchen door, her name had already been marked, closed shift, completed. She didn't move at first. She just stared at the screen, letting her eyes trace the line again. Her clock-out time had been changed. 15 minutes earlier than reality. A lie written into the building's memory. Behind her, a soft footstep stopped without sound. The Mafia boss didn't announce his presence. He never did. But Lena felt it the way she felt pressure changes before a storm. He was looking at the same monitor. Not speaking. Not reacting. Just watching. Then he spoke once, low enough that only she could hear. Who signed your exit log? The manager answered too quickly from somewhere behind them. System error. We're correcting it. Lena didn't accept that answer. Her fingers tightened around the folded document. She reached into her apron and pulled out her old phone, screen cracked, battery warning flashing in the corner. There were no new messages. No calls. But there was something else, a calendar notification she didn't recognize. Security review, internal witness review, room 3B, completed. Completed. Past tense. She had never attended anything in room 3B. She looked up slowly toward the hallway sign. Room 3B was storage. No cameras. No guests. No reason for a review. Yet the system had already recorded her presence. The Mafia boss shifted slightly, just enough for her to notice his attention narrowing. Not at her, but at the building itself. Like he was listening to something beneath the walls. Caldwell's voice carried again across the room. Warmer now, performing control. People overreact to accidents. Wine? Tension, you understand. He smiled toward the staff section, as if including everyone in his reassurance. Lena stepped back half a pace. Her heel caught the edge of a floor drain, and she steadied herself without looking down. That's when she noticed it. A second badge clipped inside the cleaning cart parked near the corridor. Same design as hers. Same barcode. Same level. But hers was still on her apron. Two identical access credentials existing at once. One of them had to be fake. Or both were real in ways she wasn't allowed to understand. The Mafia boss finally moved, not toward Caldwell, not toward the crowd, but toward the security terminal near the wall. He didn't touch it yet. He only looked at the login screen, then spoke to the guard standing beside it. Pull the last 20 minutes, he said. The guard hesitated. Sir, the feed was, pull it, he repeated. Quiet. Absolute. The guard obeyed. Lena's phone vibrated once in her pocket. No number. No name. Just a single deleted voicemail notification restored from empty archive. The timestamp matched the exact minute the wine hit her chest. And underneath it, one line of text appeared as if it had been waiting to surface. She never clocked in at all. The air in her lungs stopped feeling like her own. The security terminal clicked once, then again, like it was struggling to remember what truth was supposed to look like. The Mafia boss didn't move closer yet. He simply watched the loading circle on the screen as if it had already offended him. Behind him, the ballroom continued pretending nothing had changed. Glass clinking, soft laughter, the controlled rhythm of people who had decided not to see. Lena stood frozen near the service corridor, her phone still glowing faintly in her hand. The deleted voicemail line had not disappeared. It pulsed once, then stabilized, as if the system itself had chosen to keep it alive. She never clocked in at all. The words felt heavier the second time she read them. Not confusion anymore. Direction. She looked down at her apron, fingers tightening around the damp fabric. The wine stain had dried unevenly, forming a dark diagonal across the stitched fabric near her name tag. Something about it didn't sit right. Not the stain itself, but the way it spread, too clean around the edges, like it had hit something pre-marked. The manager reappeared, adjusting his tie too precisely, voice calm in a way that now felt rehearsed. We've already confirmed staffing logs, he said smoothly. Sometimes contractors misreport hours. It's a common clerical issue. He didn't look at Lena when he said it. He looked at the Mafia boss instead. The boss didn't respond. Not immediately. His gaze stayed on the security feed as it flickered, then shifted to an earlier timestamp. Lena noticed it first, the gap. A full 90 seconds missing between frames. Not corrupted. Not frozen. Erased. She stepped forward without thinking. I didn't leave, she said quietly. Her voice didn't shake, but it didn't need to be loud either. I was here. I was serving table 9 when the order changed to Chateau Margaux. The manager exhaled a small laugh, polite and dismissive. That table was never assigned to you. It was, Lena answered immediately. No hesitation. Because I remember the wine requisition slip. It was signed at 7:42 p.m. She reached into her apron and pulled out a second folded slip of paper, edges softened by heat and movement. Not the blacklisted document anymore. This was different. A wine order slip, partially soaked, but still readable. Table 9. Signature line. And beneath it, a second mark, different ink, different hand, initialed too quickly. The manager's expression changed for half a second. Not anger. Calculation. That's not part of the official record, he said too fast. Too smooth. It must have been misfiled during service rotation. Lena looked at him now. Really looked. I filed nothing, she said. I never left my section. The Mafia boss finally turned his head slightly, not toward the manager, but toward Lena's hands. Not the paper itself. The way she held it. Steady. Unafraid to be corrected. That detail mattered more than the document. The security feed shifted again. This time, the screen showed table 9. Empty. Then occupied. Then empty again, like time had been. Stitched incorrectly. A server walked through the frame carrying 2 glasses of wine that didn't match any order on record. The boss raised a hand slightly. The playback froze. Play that again, he said. Quiet. Controlled. The technician hesitated, then obeyed. On the second pass, something else appeared, barely visible in the corner of the frame. A second badge on Lena's uniform. Not hers. Same design. Same level. But clipped differently. The manager stepped forward quickly. That's a camera artifact, he said. Lighting distortion. It happens during, stop talking, the boss said. Not loud. Not angry. Final. Silence hit the room like pressure change. Lena didn't look at the manager anymore. She looked at the screen. At the badge that wasn't hers. Because now she understood something she hadn't understood before. The system wasn't confused. It was consistent. Someone had made it consistent. The deleted voicemail pinged again in her phone. A second line surfaced beneath the first, as if the system was correcting itself. Subject confirmed on-site at 1941. Identity override in progress. The timestamp matched the wine order slip exactly. And this time, the Mafia boss didn't look at the screen. He looked at the manager. The manager didn't move when the Mafia boss looked at him. He only adjusted his posture, straightening his jacket as if discipline alone could rebuild reality. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was calibrated, like the room itself was waiting to see which version of truth would survive it. Lena felt it pressing in from all sides. The ballroom, the cameras, the staff corridor behind her, everything narrowing into a space where she suddenly felt smaller than the apron she was still holding too tightly against her body. The manager stepped forward first, careful, controlled, voice softened into professionalism. We're going to resolve this properly, he said, as if she were a procedural inconvenience rather than a witness. He gestured toward a tablet in his hand. There's a discrepancy in the service log. All we need is confirmation of your exit time. He turned the screen toward her. A digital form. Her name already filled in. Below it, a pre-written statement. I confirm I left the premises at 7:40 p.m. and did not witness any incident involving Mr. Caldwell. Lena stared at it without blinking. The ballroom behind them continued to exist, but she could feel it distancing itself, like a tide pulling away from her feet. That's not correct, she said quietly. Not defensive, not emotional, just precise. The manager's smile tightened slightly, still polite. Mistakes happen during busy events, he replied. This is just to clarify for insurance and compliance purposes. Nothing more. A security guard appeared beside him without announcement, large, formal, hands folded in front like he had already decided what kind of problem she was. If you could cooperate, the guard added gently, we can conclude this quickly. Lena didn't look at him. She looked at the tablet again. Then she reached into her apron and placed the wine order slip on top of the screen. The soaked paper stuck slightly to the glass. Table 9. Signature mismatch. Timestamp still visible at the corner. I didn't leave at 7:40, she said. I was serving table 9 at 7:42. The manager exhaled through his nose, a sound almost like patience breaking but carefully repaired. Miss Carter, he said, lowering his voice now, as if speaking to someone emotionally overwhelmed. You've had a stressful evening. It's understandable that details feel unclear. He tapped the tablet once. We're not accusing you of anything. We're simply ensuring your statement matches the record. The Mafia boss finally moved, but only slightly. He shifted his weight, eyes still locked on the tablet, then on Lena's hands, then on the manager's timing. Not the words. The timing. Lena noticed it too. The gap between their sentences was too smooth, too practiced. Like they had rehearsed what truth should sound like before she ever spoke. She slid the receipt closer to herself. Not hiding it anymore. Claiming it. I won't sign that, she said. The guard's expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. The manager's voice softened further, dangerously now in its calmness. Refusing to confirm basic attendance will escalate this beyond your control, he said. We are trying to protect your employment history here. Employment history. Lena almost laughed, but didn't, because she had already seen her employment history rewritten in real time once tonight. The Mafia boss spoke without turning his head. Who approved the log override? The question was not loud, but it landed like pressure against glass. The manager hesitated half a second too long. System synchronization, he answered quickly. Temporary automation error during high traffic. Lena saw it then. The smallest crack. The manager's thumb pressed too tightly against the edge of the tablet, smudging the screen slightly. Not fear. Control slipping. The security guard shifted his stance, not toward her, but toward the manager. That movement mattered more than words. Lena placed her palm flat on the table holding the tablet, stopping it from being pulled away. Not aggressively, just present. Then show me the raw feed, she said. The manager blinked once. Just once. And in that blink, something broke alignment. That is not accessible at this level, he said too fast. Too clean. The Mafia boss looked at him now fully. And in that shift of attention, the temperature of the room changed. Not louder. Not colder. Sharper. Bring it up, the boss said. The manager's smile returned, but thinner now. Of course, he said, but his hand moved slightly behind his back, signaling something Lena couldn't see. A second later, the security monitor near the corridor flickered. Not the footage. The interface itself. A line of text appeared briefly before disappearing again, too fast for most to notice. But Lena saw it. Access retracted, source compromised. The manager immediately stepped between her and the screen. Too smooth, too late. Technical delay, he said lightly. We'll resolve it externally. But as he spoke, Lena noticed something on the tablet in front of her. The confirmation form had changed. Her name was still there, but the timestamp had shifted again. Now it reads 7:38 p.m. Earlier than before. Impossible. The Mafia boss didn't speak. He only watched the manager's hand withdraw slightly, like someone realizing they had just been seen doing something they could not undo. And Lena understood, with a quiet certainty that settled deeper than fear, that the mistake wasn't in the system. It was in the story they were trying to force her to agree to, and they had just changed it one time too many. The manager's hand hovered over the tablet again, but this time he didn't press anything. The hesitation lasted less than a second, yet in that silence the entire room felt it, like a misstep in a carefully rehearsed performance. Lena kept her palm on the screen, not pushing, not retreating, just holding it there as if her presence alone could anchor something that was being rewritten in real time. The Mafia boss had stopped looking at the manager entirely. His attention had shifted to the changing timestamp on the form, then to the guard's stance, then back to Lena's hands, specifically the way she wasn't shaking. That detail stayed with him longer than it should have. The manager exhaled lightly, almost sympathetic. There's no need to escalate this, he said. We're dealing with a sync conflict. It happens when multiple terminals access the same service log. His voice was smooth enough to sound reasonable, but Lena noticed how carefully he avoided looking at the receipt now lying half on the table, half in her grip. She didn't let it go. Instead, she slid it fully forward. The paper was damp at the edges, but the ink inside still held. Table 9. 7:42 p.m. Wine requisition. Signature line. A second mark beneath it. Different pressure, different ink. Rushed. The Mafia boss finally reached for it. Not quickly, not cautiously, just with the certainty of someone used to objects revealing more than people do. He didn't read it immediately. He studied the signature first. The room seemed to reduce itself around that motion. Lena watched him, noticing how his thumb paused slightly over the second initial. A recognition that didn't belong to this moment. The silence stretched. Even the background noise of the ballroom felt further away now, like the building itself had leaned in. That's not my signature format, the boss said quietly. Not accusation. Observation. The manager stepped in immediately. It's a scanned replication artifact, he said. We've seen this before with high-volume service nights. The system sometimes stop, Lena said. Her voice wasn't raised, but it cut through him cleanly. Everyone turned slightly toward her. She didn't flinch. She reached into her apron and pulled out something the others hadn't noticed yet. A second copy of the same receipt, folded tighter, edges almost torn from being handled too many times. I kept the original, she said, because I knew this one was going to change. That landed differently. The guard shifted again. The manager's expression tightened for the first time, not anger, but recalculation. The Mafia boss looked at her now, properly, like he was seeing the action, not just the outcome. You anticipated modification? He asked. Lena shook her head once. No, she said. I noticed it happening. The manager let out a small, controlled laugh. Miss Carter, that's not how these systems operate. You can't observe data corruption in real time with a paper slip. He took a step closer to the table, lowering his tone into something almost gentle again. You're stressed. You've been working a double shift. It's understandable to misinterpret sequence. Lena didn't answer him. Instead, she reached into her pocket and placed something else on the table. An old staff access card. Scratched. Outdated. The kind that should have been deactivated months ago. The moment it touched the surface, the security terminal in the background flickered again. The Mafia boss noticed it first this time, the system reacting to physical proximity, not digital input. That shouldn't have been possible. This card, Lena said quietly, still opens Service Corridor B. The manager's smile faded just slightly. That card is decommissioned, he said. It shouldn't even be functional. It is, she replied. A pause. Then she added, softer, because I used it tonight. That was the first time the guard looked at her differently. Not as staff, as something unclassified. The Mafia boss didn't move, but his eyes shifted to the card, then to the manager, then back to the system log that was still struggling to reconcile timestamps on its own screen. A mismatch appeared again. 7 minutes unaccounted for between entries. No explanation. No metadata trail. Just absence. The manager stepped in again, faster now. That's an outdated credential being misread by legacy hardware, he said. We can remove it from the system entirely if needed. But Lena saw something he didn't control, his hand briefly tightening at his side, just enough to betray discomfort. The Mafia boss finally spoke, voice lower than before. Who authorized legacy access continuity? The question wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The manager hesitated. A fraction too long. No one, he said. Too quickly. That was the crack. Lena noticed it. The boss noticed it. The guard noticed it too, shifting his weight subtly away from the manager for the first time. Lena didn't smile. She didn't relax. She simply kept the old card on the table, flat under the light. Because now the system had a physical object it couldn't rewrite. And the Mafia boss, watching the same object, realized something that made his silence deepen further than before. Someone inside his own structure had already been rewriting reality before tonight ever began. The old access card sat under the chandelier light like it didn't belong to any version of the building that wanted to admit it existed. The manager kept his distance now, no longer touching the tablet, no longer offering explanations, only silence wrapped in careful posture. The Mafia boss didn't touch the card again. He didn't need to. He was looking past it now, into the system behind it, as if the object had already told him more than the people in the room were willing to say. Lena stood beside the table, her fingers still near the damp receipt, though she wasn't holding it anymore. She had let it rest where it could be seen. Not hidden, not defended, just visible. Rain tapped against the high glass windows in a steady rhythm, soft enough to feel like time passing without permission. Somewhere in the back, a dishwasher cycle restarted, plates clinking under pressure, water boiling, the sound of things being scrubbed clean while nothing actually changed. The Mafia boss finally spoke without looking up. Pull every entry this card has ever triggered, he said. A pause. Not the summary. The raw logs. The technician hesitated. That's archived under restricted historical audit, sir. Now, the boss replied. No volume increase. No emotion added. Just finality. The technician obeyed. Lena exhaled slowly, but not in relief. In recognition, because she had heard that tone before, not as authority, but as a decision already made. The manager shifted slightly. "This is unnecessary escalation," he said carefully. "We are talking about a misread credential and a procedural discrepancy involving staff hours." Lena turned her head slightly toward him. "My hours weren't misread," she said. "They were rewritten." Her voice was quiet, but it didn't break. The manager's expression tightened. "That's a serious accusation." "So is erasing someone from their own shift," she replied. No anger, just fact. The Mafia boss didn't react to her words immediately. Instead, he watched the loading terminal as the system began pulling archived logs. Line by line, timestamp by timestamp. Then something shifted. The screen displayed a corridor access record, Service Corridor B. Entry logged at 7:41 p.m. Exit never recorded. Then another line appeared beneath it. Same card ID, same badge, but a second user tag attached to it. System admin override. Lena frowned slightly. That wasn't hers. The boss noticed the hesitation in her face before he noticed the data itself. That mattered more to him than the system anomaly. "You didn't authorize a second scan," he said quietly. Lena shook her head. "No," the manager spoke too quickly. "That's a background synchronization artifact from legacy access migration." The boss cut him off with a glance. Not harsh, just enough. The manager stopped speaking mid-sentence. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The logs continued. A second entry appeared. Same corridor, same time window. But this time, the camera feed metadata attached to it showed something impossible. The angle of recording was manually shifted from inside the corridor, not outside. Lena stepped closer to the screen without realizing it. "That camera doesn't exist in that hallway," she said. The technician froze. The boss didn't look at her yet. "Confirm," he said. The technician swallowed. "There is no installed unit at that angle." Another silence. This one longer. The kind that doesn't wait for permission to become dangerous. Lena's old phone vibrated softly on the table. She glanced down. A new line had appeared in the deleted voicemail thread. Restored without request. Shift override executed by internal clearance. Caldwell authorization chain confirmed. Her hand tightened slightly. Not fear. Containment. "He used my name," she said quietly. The manager's face flickered for the first time. Not confusion anymore. Friction. "There must be a misunderstanding. Mr. Caldwell has no administrative access beyond donor protocols." The boss finally looked at him directly. "Check donor protocol overrides from the last 6 months," he said. The manager hesitated again. Longer this time. "That would require executive clearance." "You have it," the boss replied. No hesitation. The manager opened his mouth, then closed it. That was the moment Lena noticed it, the first real fracture in his control. Not panic. Calculation losing speed. The system terminal updated again. A new file surfaced. Not a log. A report. Internal HR restructuring. Her name appeared at the top. Then again, in the middle. Then erased in one version, reinstated in another. 3 versions of her employment existing at once. None of them consistent. Lena looked down at her apron without touching it. "I signed 1 contract," she said. "Not 3. The boss didn't respond immediately. He was reading something deeper now, something beyond the screen, timing patterns, repetition errors, access symmetry. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower than before. "This isn't a mistake in records," he said. A pause. "It's a pattern." Lena looked at him. For the first time, not as employer, not as authority, but as someone following the same thread she had been forced to hold alone. "Then what is it?" she asked. He didn't answer her immediately. Instead, he looked back at the manager. And in that quiet shift, something changed that no one in the room could reverse easily anymore. Not because the truth was clear, but because the wrong person had been trusted long enough to build it. The manager didn't speak after that. He simply stepped back half a foot, as if distance could restore authority. But the room no longer treated him as the center of anything. The Mafia boss had shifted fully now, not louder, not faster, just decisively elsewhere. His attention had left explanations behind and moved into structure, into patterns, into what the system was trying to hide by repeating itself. Lena stood slightly to the side of the table, her apron still damp at the edge, the old access card resting near the receipt like two incompatible truths forced into the same space. The ballroom felt different now, not calmer, focused, like a room realizing it was being measured. The boss finally spoke, voice even. Run the full corridor, B sequence again. The technician hesitated. Sir, we already confirmed. Again, he repeated. The second time, no one argued. The screen replayed the corridor footage. Empty hallway. Service door. Lena entering. Then a distortion, barely noticeable unless you were looking for absence instead of presence. A single frame skipped. Not frozen. Removed. The manager shifted immediately. That's compression loss during archival transfer, he said quickly. We see it in high-load systems. No, Lena said. Everyone turned. She didn't raise her voice. She just pointed at the screen. Look at the clock on the wall. The footage paused. The hallway clock in the video read 7:41. In the next visible frame, it read 7:43. 2 minutes missing. But Lena shook her head once. Not missing, she said. Moved. The boss didn't ask her to explain. He rewound again himself. Slower this time. He watched the doorway. Not Lena. Not the corridor. The threshold. The exact point where people transitioned from recorded to unrecorded. The manager exhaled lightly. This is becoming speculative, he said. We are interpreting artifacts instead of facts. Lena reached into her pocket and pulled out her old phone again. The screen was still open to the restored voicemail thread. Another line had appeared beneath the last one. Secondary override confirmed. Shift signature mismatch resolved externally. She placed the phone on the table beside the access card. Not gently, not aggressively, just deliberately. My shift wasn't logged, she said. It was rewritten in real time. The boss finally looked at the manager directly. Who has right access to HR logs during live service? The manager didn't answer immediately. That pause was longer than any silence so far tonight. Only executive compliance, he said finally, and donor oversight in restricted cases. The word donor landed differently this time. He knew it did, because he said it slower than before. The boss leaned slightly forward. Call Caldwell. The manager blinked. That's not necessary. He's already. Call him, the boss repeated. Calm. Final. A phone was brought forward. Speaker activated. It rang once. Twice. On the third ring, a voice answered, smooth, relaxed, almost amused. I assume this is about the little misunderstanding, Caldwell said. The room tightened without moving. The boss didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at Lena, then at the receipt, then at the access card. He was building a sequence now, not a reaction. Where were you between 7:40 and 7:45? He asked through the speaker. A soft laugh. At table 9, of course. Speaking with your staff about service correction protocols. There was a spill incident, if I recall correctly. Lena didn't move, but her fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the table. That's incorrect, she said quietly, not into the phone, but into the space where lies usually survived. A small pause on the line. Then Caldwell's tone sharpened just slightly, still polite, but thinner. I'm sorry, who is speaking? The manager stepped forward quickly. There seems to be confusion among staff under stress. We're resolving. The boss raised one hand. The manager stopped mid-sentence. Silence returned instantly, heavier than before. The boss looked at the technician. Pull live metadata for table 9 during that window. The technician hesitated. Sir, that level of granularity, now. The system complied. Data began to populate in real time. Table assignments. Order logs. Staff proximity tracking. Lena watched one line appear and then flicker, changing once. Then again. Not randomly. Patterned. Controlled. Then something unexpected happened. The system flagged a conflict. 2 simultaneous presence records for Lena at different locations during the same 90-second window. The manager stepped forward again, voice tightening. That's impossible. Human duplication isn't supported by the system architecture. It is if someone is editing identity attribution midstream, Lena said. The room went still. The boss didn't correct her. He didn't confirm her either. He simply looked at the manager now with the kind of attention that didn't require words anymore. Caldwell's voice came back through the speaker, slightly impatient now. If this is about internal staffing errors, I assure you my team can. The boss reached forward and ended the call. One motion. Clean. No emotion wasted. The silence after the disconnect didn't feel empty. It felt structured. like something had just been removed from the system that kept it stable. Lena looked at the screen one last time. The missing frames, the rewritten timestamps, the duplicate identity entries. None of them were random anymore. They were coordinated. And the boss, standing still at the center of it, finally spoke. Not to the room, not to the staff, not to the system. Someone inside my structure is authorizing reality changes. He paused, then added quietly. And they've been doing it long enough to believe no one would ever check twice. The manager's expression changed at that moment. Not fear yet, but recognition that something had just stopped protecting him. The room didn't move for several seconds after the call ended. Not because nothing was happening, but because something had already finished happening beneath it. The silence was no longer waiting. It was confirming. The Mafia boss stood still in front of the security terminal, his eyes fixed on a single line of data that had just refreshed itself one too many times to be accidental. Lena didn't speak. She didn't need to. She was holding the old access card in one hand and the receipt in the other now, not as evidence for someone else, but as proof she had stopped doubting herself. The manager stood slightly, off-center, no longer performing confidence, only containment. His voice, when it came, was carefully measured. We are dealing with a system anomaly amplified by external interference, he said. Nothing here indicates intentional manipulation. The boss didn't look at him. Instead, he said quietly, "Bring me the original service authorization file for Table 9. The technician hesitated. "Sir, that file has been archived under compliance lock. Open it," the boss interrupted. No raise in volume. No pressure added. Just removal of choice. A few seconds passed. Then the screen shifted. Not into logs. Into the original document chain. Lena stepped closer without realizing it. The document opened slowly, as if resisting exposure. Table assignment. Staff allocation. Signature approval. Her eyes tracked the lines until she saw it. Her name. Correct spelling. Correct time. Correct placement. But the signature below, it was not Caldwell's. It was the manager's. The silence that followed was different now. It had weight. The manager finally spoke, but his voice no longer carried certainty. "That is not active authorization," he said. "That is a draft file used for preliminary scheduling." Lena shook her head once. "That's the version I signed," she said, "before it was changed." The boss turned his head slightly toward her now, not fully, just enough to acknowledge the shift. "Changed by whom?" he asked. Lena didn't answer immediately. Instead, she reached into her apron and pulled out something no one had seen yet. A small folded carbon copy, worn at the edges, hidden behind the wine order slip she had been carrying since the beginning. She placed it on the table, carefully, deliberately. It was the same service authorization, but this one had a different timestamp. Earlier, and beneath the manager's signature, a second line, initialed in a hand that didn't belong to any system role on record. The technician zoomed in without being told. The initials resolved slowly on screen. C. Caldwell. The manager's breathing changed. Not dramatic. Controlled. But no longer even. "That's impossible," he said. "Donor access does not extend to internal scheduling architecture." Lena looked at him directly. "It did tonight," she said. The boss finally stepped forward. Not quickly. Not aggressively. Just close enough that the table now separated truth from everyone still trying to negotiate with it. He picked up the carbon copy. Read it once. Then again. His expression didn't change outwardly, but something inside it did. Not anger. Not shock. Recognition that something he built had been operating without his consent. Lena spoke quietly, but for the first time, the room didn't interrupt her. "He didn't just pour wine on me," she said. "He made the system agree I was never there." The manager immediately stepped in. "This is being misinterpreted. A donor of Mr. Caldwell's level does not have motive to stop defending him," the boss said. The interruption wasn't loud. It was absolute. The manager froze mid-breath. The boss lowered the document slightly. For a moment, his eyes didn't look at anyone in the room. They looked at the structure itself, the way signatures had layered over signatures, the way identities had been rewritten without triggering alarms, the way compliance had quietly stopped being neutral. And for the first time, something in his posture changed. Not collapse, not rage, but something heavier. The recognition of oversight, of permission given without understanding consequence. He had missed it. Not once. Repeatedly. Lena watched him realize it. Not from his face, but from the way his hand tightened slightly around the paper before releasing it again. The manager tried one last time, softer now. Sir, I can provide a full explanation. The boss finally looked at him. And the look was not accusation. It was distance. You already did, he said quietly. Then he placed the carbon copy back on the table, aligned it perfectly with the original, and turned slightly toward the side of the room where legal counsel stood frozen, watching the system scroll in silence. The boss adjusted his cuff once, slowly, like someone closing a decision rather than making one. Call my attorney. The attorney arrived without announcement. Only the sound of a door closing softly behind him and the quiet shuffle of documents that had already begun, reshaping the room before anyone spoke again. The carbon copy, the original authorization file, and the access logs were no longer just screens and paper. They were evidence moving through systems that no longer belonged to the people who tried to control them. The Mafia boss stood still as the attorney reviewed everything in silence, flipping one page, then another, pausing only once when he saw the repeated overwrite signatures tied to donor clearance. Lena didn't move from her position near the table. She wasn't waiting for permission anymore. She was waiting for something simpler, for the version of reality that kept changing around her to finally stop denying she existed. The manager tried once more, voice restrained but strained at the edges. This is being escalated beyond proportional response. A misunderstanding and administrative layering. He stopped mid-sentence when the attorney placed a single finger on the table. Not forceful. Final. This is not a misunderstanding, the attorney said quietly. The Mafia boss didn't look at the manager when he spoke next. Terminate all donor override privileges tied to Caldwell, he said. No anger. No emphasis. Just structural removal. The words didn't echo. They settled. Lena's fingers tightened slightly at her side, but she didn't look relieved. She looked like someone making sure something irreversible was actually real. The access card on the table was taken first, then the carbon copy, then the digital logs frozen on screen were exported in silence. No one argued anymore. The system itself had stopped offering resistance. Somewhere in the background, a notification chimed once, soft, administrative, meaningless in any other moment, but now it sounded like closure beginning to register. The manager finally spoke again, but his voice had lost its architecture. Sir, I have served this organization for. You signed what you needed to sign. The boss interrupted. That was all. The attorney slid a final document forward. Termination protocol. Audit initiation. External compliance notification already queued. Not punishment. Correction. Lena watched it happen without stepping closer. Not because she was detached, but because she was finally outside the version of events that had tried to rewrite her. The Mafia boss turned slightly toward her then. Not as authority anymore. As acknowledgement. Your employment record will be restored, he said. A pause. Corrected to match what actually happened. Lena nodded once. I don't want it rewritten, she said quietly. The room stilled again. Even the attorney paused. She continued, voice steady. I want it left alone. Just not erased again. The boss looked at her for a long moment. Then he gave a small nod. Not agreement to the system. Agreement to her. The access card was placed back into Lena's hand, not as clearance, but as return. The same badge that had been stained earlier was cleaned, relaminated, and reissued by the time the lights outside the ballroom softened into the kind of quiet that follows truth being documented. The name on it was no longer partially faded. It was complete. Lena Carter. No prefixes. No status qualifiers. Just a name that could not be overwritten without leaving a trace. She looked at it for a long moment, then clipped it back onto her apron. The same apron from the beginning. Washed now. No wine stain left, except a faint shadow where it had once been. The boss noticed it too. He didn't comment. He didn't need to. Later, long after the system audits had finished and the room had emptied into procedural silence, Lena stood alone for a moment in the staff corridor. The neon exit sign hummed above her. The dishwasher in the back had stopped. Everything felt reset, but not erased. The apron hung straight now, clean fabric catching the light without apology. She adjusted the name tag once, gently, like someone confirming it belonged there. The Mafia boss paused near the doorway, watching her for a moment without interrupting. Then he spoke, almost quietly. They won't rewrite it again. Lena didn't turn around immediately. She simply nodded. I know, she said. And for the first time since the wine had been poured, the silence between them wasn't pressure anymore. It was resolution. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, nothing about her name moved again. Not even one.